must look a mess.
The Way Home just delivered the most emotionally intense episode of this entire final season. And I honestly do not know which part of it is going to stay with me longer. The image of Dell lying unconscious in the woods, dreaming of Colton, while her family desperately tries to reach her. Or Nick waking up in a 1925 jail cell with perfect wavy hair, saying history is a lot more pungent than he imagined. Or Elliot, quietly, deliberately, pocketing Kat's car keys at the end of this episode and driving himself somewhere nobody expected him to go. Let's talk about all of it. Dell's concussion dream and what Colton tells her she cannot have. What Nick and Kat discovered in 1925 about the Augie boys and a connection nobody predicted. Why Kane letting them out of jail might be the most important decision this episode makes. What Grayson's phone call means, and why Elliot ending up in 1979 instead of 1925 might have given this family something more valuable than anything they could have found in the Lingermore tunnels. First, Dell, because this is where the episode lives emotionally and everything else radiates outward from it. Alice finds Dell's horse running through the field without a rider, and she knows immediately. She runs to the woods and finds Dell on the ground, unconscious, and they get her back to the house. And Dell's body is there in the present, but her mind keeps slipping back. Back to Colton, back to Jacob as a young boy, back to a version of her life before everything fell apart. And I honestly think the concussion is just the medical explanation. What is actually happening is that Dell has been carrying so much for so long, so many years of grief and missing and holding this family together alone, that the moment her guard comes down, her whole self rushes toward the place it has always wanted to be. Toward Colton, in a kitchen, in a moment that still feels warm. And in her dream, Colton tells her she cannot stay, that she has to go back. And Dell says she can stay as long as she wants. And Colton tells her, your son is the reason you cannot stay. And I honestly had to sit with that line for a long time, because this is the show reminding us of something it has been building all season. Jacob came home, reluctantly, painfully, with Thomas's voice in his head calling him a coward, but he came home, and he is in that house right now. And Dell's subconscious is being told by the man she loves most that her son's presence is the anchor that pulls her back to the living. Alice goes to check on Dell, and she is not waking up. And Alice starts to cry, and then Jacob walks in, and he sits beside his mother, and he begs her to wake up. And Dell hears him. Through the dream, through the warmth of Colton's kitchen, she hears her son's voice, and she chooses to come back. And Kat arrives to find Dell and Jacob embracing. And I honestly could not watch that scene without thinking about every conversation this season where Dell has been holding herself at a careful distance from everything that might hurt her again. And here she is, pulled back from the edge by the son she almost lost twice. Later, Dell explains to Julian that she will not be joining him in Stratford. She wants to keep resting and spending more time with Jacob. Julian understands and tells her he got caught up in what things could have looked like for them, and that is it. Julian closes cleanly. No drama, no hard feelings. Just two people who felt something briefly and are honest enough to know what it was and what it was not. And Sam knocks on the door later, relieved Dell is okay. And the conversation between them is still unresolved, but Dell is alive and Jacob is home. And right now that is enough. Now, 1925, and I want to start with Nick, because this episode completely changed how I feel about him in the past. Nick drinks with the Augie boys at their speakeasy, gets the map to their stills, and wakes up in jail with amazing wavy hair. His line about history being a lot more pungent than he imagined got an actual out-loud laugh from me. And I honestly did not expect to enjoy Nick in the 1920s as much as I did, because Kat has always been the one who charges directly at every situation. And Nick approaches things completely differently, calmer, more patient, more willing to sit down with people he does not trust and let them think they are winning. And in 1925, that approach works in a way that Kat's direct method simply cannot. They landed in 1925 together and immediately overheard the Augie boys talking. Grayson was sending Fern away, and the Augie boys mentioned that there was going to be trouble when Auntie Coop returned. Auntie Coop. Tessa Cooper, the name that has been at the center of this mystery all season. The Augie boys, the bootleggers, the criminals, the men who have been threatening Kat every time she appears in the 1920s, they know Tessa is coming back. Or they are afraid she is. And whatever Tessa knows about their operation is significant enough that they would rather she never arrived at all. Nick sneezes. The Augie boys turn around, and in a moment of genuine creativity, Nick just walks forward and greets them like an old friend. And it works. Until they notice Kat behind him, and the chase begins. But not before Nick has already done his job. Bonding with the Augie boys over drinks and getting the information about their illegal rum operation and their hideout, called the Big Fish. This is what Nick is for in 1925, not the hero, the strategist. And I honestly think Kat would never have gotten this far without him. They end up in jail. Again, because apparently the 1925 jail cell is Kat's natural habitat at this point. But this time getting arrested actually helps, because Kane is the one who lets them out. Kane lets them go because he needs their help dealing with Grayson Goodwin. He does not trust Grayson at all, especially when it comes to Fern. Kane has been watching Grayson operate for long enough to know exactly what he is. And the moment Kat mentions her suspicions, Cliff Kane crumbles. He has been waiting for someone to confirm what he already knows. And Kat and Nick just became his allies whether they intended to or not. And then there is the detail that nobody had on their bingo card. The Augie boys have a connection to Al Capone. The bootleggers in a small Canadian town in the 1920s are operating as part of a network that runs all the way to Chicago. And suddenly, what looked like a local criminal operation is something much larger and much more dangerous. And Tessa, who this episode hints was involved in the illegal alcohol business around Lingermore, is connected to all of it. The show hints that someone bigger than Grayson may actually be controlling everything behind the scenes. And I honestly think that someone is tied to the Capone network in a way that made Tessa dangerous to a lot of powerful people. There is also a phone call where Grayson says, "I already dealt with Fern." And that line landed like a stone dropping into still water, because Fern is the person Kat trusts most in the 1920s. And Grayson, who genuinely seems to care about Fern in his scenes with her, who knows about Auntie Coop, who is difficult to read as either villain or complicated man, just told someone on a phone that he has handled her. And I honestly do not know what that means yet. But I know it is not good. And an Alice in Wonderland book, inscribed, from Auntie Coop. We have more Easter eggs in this episode than we know what to do with right now. But that book is the most specific one, because it places Tessa in a position of affection and intimacy with someone in this story before any of the time travel began. She was not just a stranger who jumped through a pond. She was Auntie Coop to someone who kept a book she gave them for decades. When Kat finally reaches Fern and confronts her, Fern admits that Auntie Coop predicted someone would come looking for her one day. She knew this moment was coming, and Kat warns her that the Augie boys are coming for Coop, and the chase begins. Kat is just ahead of Nick and jumps into the pond first, urging him to hurry. And for one genuinely terrifying moment, it is not clear whether Nick will make it before the Augie boys reach him. And then he arrives home, safe. And I honestly screamed at my screen during that chase sequence in a way this show has not made me do in a very long time. Nick thanks Kat for the trip and shares the good news that he finally closed on the house he was buying in Port Haven. He is leaving for now, but will be back in a month with his wife, Claire. His wife, who we still have never seen, who has been referenced repeatedly but never appeared. And Nick has now jumped through a time pond and almost been trapped in 1925. And he is going home to get his wife and bring her back to Port Haven. And I honestly think when Claire finally walks into this story, she is going to change everything. And then Elliot, who the pond did not send to 1925. Elliot lands in 1979 instead, and he gets to witness his parents, young Vic, completely lit up about becoming a father. For years, Elliot has been carrying confusion and resentment about his parents, about being left on a doorstep, about never knowing who his mother was or why she made the choices she made. And watching young Vic, his father, genuinely excited, genuinely hopeful, genuinely in love with the idea of having a child, gives Elliot something he has been missing his entire life. Context, understanding, the knowledge that the intentions were never cruel, even if the outcome itself turned out to be devastating. And Evan Williams does so much with his face in this entire sequence that I honestly think it is one of the best acted scenes this show has ever produced. And then, quietly, without making a big announcement about it, Elliot pockets Kat's car keys and drives himself to the Herald archives. He is done waiting for answers to arrive. He is going to find them himself. And I honestly love this moment more than almost anything this season has shown us about Elliot, because he has spent 3 seasons being the person things happen around. And now, in the final season, he is becoming someone who makes things happen. He is more like Kat than either of them has ever acknowledged. Episode 6, Yes Sir, That's My Baby, airs this Sunday, May 24 at 9 p.m. on Hallmark Channel. It streams the following day on Hallmark Plus. And with 5 episodes left in this final season, Elliot at the Herald, Nick returning with Claire, Grayson saying he already dealt with Fern, the Capone connection opening into something much larger than anyone expected. I honestly think the best episodes of this season are still ahead of us. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Tessa chose not to come back? And what do you think Grayson meant when he said he already dealt with Fern? Because after everything this episode revealed, I honestly think those 2 questions are connected in a way we are not going to see coming.